Hello everyone, juxtaposition here. This will be CCC number 2. That's Cackling, Cacophony of Chaos, video number 2. Alright, just want to continue on with the Elizabeth Holmes because I do feel empathy for her. Classic scapegoat in the legacy of Susan Atkins, in the legacy of Leslie Von Houten, or Patricia Krenwinkel, or Charlie Watson, all of whom are innocent of felony murder and or fraud, but nevertheless spent most of their lives in state prison. And here we have Elizabeth Holmes going off to federal prison for an 11-year sentence. Now, she won't serve 11 years. And in the case of Patricia Hearst, you may remember that she was convicted of felony bank robbery, but she only served I think about 13 months in federal prison, and Jimmy Carter pardoned her. So I am expecting that since this is a CIA operation having to do with Stanford University and I believe Sand Hill Road, certainly looks like they got their fingerprints all over this Theranos financial fraud, since George Shultz of the Hoover Institute sat on the board of directors along with Henry Kissinger and James Mattis of the United States Marines while he's getting paid from multiple military contractor corporations, right? So none of these people have any ethical standard whatsoever. So I'm just wondering where Elizabeth Holmes got her seed money. She was a child. She was in her 20s when her company was capitalized, and then her board of directors founded, which included 10 members who were all CIA approved and historical soldiers. I mean, Henry Kissinger was on the board of directors of the Rand Corporation. That's CIA. He was on the board of directors of Gulf and Western, which controlled CI picture production at Paramount Pictures, which brought you Roman Polanski. You know, the guy's the same age as Dianne Feinstein, another Polish Jewish person, just like Dianne Feinstein comes from a Polish Jew lineage. And so I looked into the CIA operations seems to always include some Jewish person at some place. So guess what? Elizabeth Holmes has a Jewish heritage. Yes, she does. But before we get into that, her father worked at Enron and was a vice president for Enron. Enron is very similar to the FTX scandal. They had the biggest and baddest partners, General Electric being the most notable partner, who extracted the most profits from Enron before it was torpedoed. And General Electric was a partner of Enron, which involved lots of accounting fraud, which involved Jeffrey Skilling, who was an MBA from Harvard University. You know, isn't that where Jane Fraser got an MBA? The chief executive officer of Citigroup. She got an MBA from the same university that graduated financial fraudster Jeffrey Skilling. I know quite a few Harvard MBAs. Some of them work on Sand Hill Road. Some of them work in Manhattan, New York, and live in New Jersey, in Princeton, New Jersey. I know them quite well, and I don't think they're very smart people. I don't. But I think that they are obedient, that they keep their secrets, and they have an oath to world mission. In other words, they do what they're told, right? And that's what's the Harvard University and Princeton and Yale and Stanford is all about. It's about obedience. It's what the Sacred Heart Order Convent's all about. It's about obedience. Do what you say. We follow orders or people die. Let's ask Elizabeth Holmes. She doesn't look very happy. She's going to be packing her bags and going off to federal prison here. But I just want to know why James Mattis isn't in handcuffs. I don't know why Henry Kissinger isn't rounded up on a wheelchair and wheeled into a federal prison facility like he deserves to be. For all the crimes that he's committed through his lifetime, forget about Theranos. But he was on the board of directors of Elizabeth Holmes' company, which he did not control because she's surrounded by CIA agents. And her father worked at Enron. So the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, right? This is what they do at the CIA. It's a friends and family program. This is how Sharon Tate got killed, right? This is how Abigail Folger got bayoneted to death. Remember Abigail Folger, a private banker, Harvard master's degree in art history, bayoneted to death by a CIA NATO M7 bayonet? She would never have been murdered if she wasn't the daughter of Enos Mejia and the daughter of Peter Folger, who are State Department CIA operatives. And if Enos Mejia hadn't gotten her daughter, Abigail Folger, into the money laundering business, private banking, she wouldn't have been murdered. And if Paul and Doris Tate, two CIA operatives for Army intelligence, if they didn't pimp out their daughter in beauty pageants and get her on the cover of Stars and Stripes in the April 1960 issue, don't you see the irony here? Sharon Tate is rolled out on the cover of Stars and Stripes, wearing a cowgirl hat, straddling a Nike Surface to Air missile, just days before Francis Gary Powers is shot down on May 1st, 1960. That's the issue that Sharon Tate was portrayed to our military fighting forces. Sharon Tate is the cover girl at age 16 in the photo. She's 17. She's age 17 when the photo appears in April 1960. And Gary Powers goes into prison in Russia for 2 years, for almost 2 years, 22 months, a little short of 2 years. And then he's murdered by the CIA in August 1977. He's put down in America at the Sepulveda Dam Reservoir, which is home to porn, which is where Jose Menendez worked. He's another CIA operative. That's where John Frankenheimer worked, near the Sepulveda Dam Reservoir where Gary Powers was killed. That's where John Frankenheimer learned how to edit film at an Air Force reserve facility bordering the Sepulveda Dam Reservoir, where Gary Powers was murdered in a fake helicopter explosion, over a baseball diamond. And Elizabeth Holmes, her father worked for Enron. And then after he lost his job from Enron, since it obviously dissolved into a gajillion pieces, right? Yeah, he wasn't unemployed. He went on. His name is Christian Rasmus Holmes, and he went on to work at the various federal agencies of our government. The United States Agency for International Development, he got a nice job over there, all right? Then after that, he goes to work for the Environmental Protection Agency, really the APA. I wonder what they know about aluminum chemtrails. They're not doing anything about it. They're dumping chemtrails all over the United States of America on a daily basis, and the EPA isn't stopping it. Neither is the FAA. You know, the people that brought you safety for 9/11 regarding airplane traffic over Manhattan. What did the FAA say about 9/11? Nothing. United States Trade and Development Agency, that's another Arlington, Virginia spook organization. All right, so that's Elizabeth Holmes's father. Worked for 3 federal agencies after the Enron debacle. But more importantly, her great-great-grandfather, let's look into him, because that's really fascinating. That's very fascinating. Unbelievable. So part of the Holmes Danish history, because they're supposedly Danish, right? But her paternal great-great-great-grandfather was Charles Louis Fleischmann, who's a Hungarian Jewish immigrant who founded Fleischmann's Yeast Company in Cincinnati, Ohio. The Holmes family was very proud of its yeast empire history, according to the family friend Joseph Foege. Hard to pronounce his name. Anyway, her mother was born in Georgia but has a French-Canadian history. You know, that's where lots of clandestine service operators come in from Montreal and Toronto, Canada, which would include Art Linklater. He came from Sasquatch. But you should look at the history of her great-great-great-grandfather, because Fleischmann's Yeast is an American brand of yeast that was founded by a Hungarian-American businessman, Charles Louis Fleischmann, who's the great-great-great-grandfather of Elizabeth Holmes, who's now looking at an 11-year federal prison sentence for financial fraud. It is currently owned by Associated British Foods. Oh yeah, great. And it is sold to both consumer and industrial markets. It sells to markets in the United States and Canada. The yeast is available in a number of different forms with various qualities and intended uses. Fleischmann is also a brand name of corn oil, margarine. Corn oil margarine. It's kind of an oxymoron to use the word margarine and corn in the same sentence. The company was founded by Hungarian Jews, which was Charles Louis Fleischmann and his brother Maximilian Fleischmann. Those two. But they had a third partner named James Gaff, if you believe that. Gaff, like I've committed a gaffe. And it was founded in Riverside, Cincinnati district of Ohio in 1868. So kind of during the gold rush psychological operation out here in Alta California. We've got Hungarian Jews and James Gaff putting together production of yeast in Cincinnati, Ohio. In case you didn't know, that's where Charlie Manson came from. All right, so whose real name is Scott? It's Charlie Scott. In 1924, the brother's nephew, so, we're going down the legacy, Raoul Fleischmann, used the wealth that was generated by the family business to provide the launching for the New Yorker magazine in New York City. Now, that's a CIA social engineering publication, periodical. So you see, that means that the yeast company, that's a clandestine services business, because why would you take the wealth created from a legitimate family business and go into social engineering in New York City? Why would you care about that? Unless, see, it's like Bill Gates. Why would Bill Gates set up the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, tax-free, and then, fly around the world with Jeffrey Epstein, a child pedophile, and then try to raise yet more money, and then get involved with face diapers and mandatory vaccinations? Why would you do that if you were a billionaire? Wouldn't you just want to go surfing in Hawaii? Wouldn't you want to take up a hobby? Wouldn't you want to do something productive with your time than going around bullying people and treating them with disrespect like a herd of sheep, which is what Bill Gates is doing? I mean, he's not qualified on public health matters. He should keep his lips zipped. But he's not. And you know why he's not? Because it's not his money. That the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Jeffrey Bezos wealth, that's not their money. That's not their money. That's the CIA bank money. And they will do whatever they're told because they have an oath of obedience, or they'll lose their Japanese gardener, and they'll lose their chauffeur, and they'll lose their 5 estate properties. And then they may go the way of Roberto Calfi, the way of Michele Sindona, and the way of, don't make me say it, Abigail Folger, private banker with a Harvard master's degree. Are you listening to me, Jane Fraser? Abigail Folger was a bigger person than you were, and she got whacked at age 25. You're 30 years older than her. You are younger than Roberto Calfi, and you are younger than Michele Sindona. But they got whacked, and so did William Colby, director of CIA. He got whacked in his so-called retirement at age 76. So you're never too young. John Benet Ramsey, age 6. You're never too old. William Colby, age 76. Timothy Leary, age 75. I mean, prostate cancer. I mean, who knows how he died, right? Maybe you should ask Oliver Stone. He's one of the last people to visit Timothy Leary at the Sharon Tate murder scene just before he died. Anyway, eventually, you should know that there were lots of false claims made to promote and market this yeast, that the American Medical Association, disagreed with. That there was claimed that the yeast from the Fleischmann Yeast Company could get rid of constipation and intestinal fatigue, if there is such a thing as intestinal fatigue, right? Fatigue brought on by the pressures of modern civilization. So these are false advertising claims. And Consumer Reports disputed that the Fleischmann yeast advertising, that it really cured constipation or acne. It's another claim, false claim that was made. Standard Brand merged with Nabisco Brands in 1981, and in 1986, RJR Nabisco sold Fleischmann to an Australian company. Now that's important, people, because KK&R and Jerome Kornberg, if I got his name right. I've already forgotten Jerome's name. The founder of KKR, private banker. Kohlberg. Jerome Kohlberg. Guess what? I was at an auditing firm that had to do the due diligence on an RJR Nabisco acquisition that was being supervised by KKR and Jerome Kohlberg. So in other words, 2800 Sand Hill Road, the place that brought you Cisco Systems, the place that brought you FTX, is also the place that presided over RJR Nabisco and Elizabeth Holmes' great-great-great-grandfather's company, Fleischmann. What's it called? It used to be called Fleischmann Yeast and Company, but when their partner James Gaff died, they dropped the word "and company." They dropped the "and company" and just became Fleischmann Yeast. So what I'm trying to tell you is eventually Jerome Kohlberg's KKR, Jerome Kohlberg's from New Rochelle, New York, which I call the Bronx, because he was right on the border of the Bronx near Fordham University. He was 8 miles from Fordham University. And I'm going to call Sand Hill Road's participation in Fleischmann Yeast clandestine. Seems very private, secretive, right? And I'm wondering where Elizabeth Holmes, whose great-great-great-grandfather was involved with Fleischmann Yeast, which morphed into The New Yorker, which is a social engineering magazine, that she wasn't born from under a rock. She fell from a tree, the clandestine service tree, and it's a Jewish tree. It's a Jewish tree. There's a lot of Jewish people involved in these clandestine operations. I mean, want me to rattle off some names? Oliver Silverstein, Mark Levin Lane, Robert Evans, Bob Evans, a.k.a. Robert Shapira, Alan Dershowitz, Sidney Gottlieb, Albert Laverne, a medical psychiatrist from Manhattan and Yonkers with privileges at Bellevue State Hospital, with a 13-room exam office in the city of Manhattan, city of New York, and programmed one of his students in Fordham University to murder his own wife. Yeah, true story. True story. Ann Kernan, look it up. It's going to be hard to find Ann Kernan, but she's changed her name and moved on. She spent about, I think, 8 years in psychiatric mental hospital, but they let her out. She was MK Ultra, Manchurian Candidate style. What I'm trying to tell you is Hungarian Jews figure in. We had John Houseman, remember him? Professor Kingsfield, who portrayed a professor at Harvard Law that, Alan Dershowitz is trying to live up to his standard. Well, he was a Romanian Jewish man, John Houseman. Not his real name. It was Jocks Hausman or something. Anyway, then we have Bill Graham, who has his name on the San Francisco Civic Auditorium. Isn't that interesting? Because Bill Graham is the CIA name for him. So we have a CIA name on the Civic Auditorium in San Francisco on a building that was constructed during the World Exhibition. And you should know that the Fleischmann and Company Yeast Company was featured in the 1876 Centennial Exhibition. And you should also know that the Walt Disney Disneyland that was presented to us with Ronald Reagan and Bob Cummins and Art Linkletter in 1955, July 17th, 1955, it was patterned after the World's Exhibition Fair. Yes, it was. In other words, that idea is not an original Disney idea. They just copycatted the World's Expedition, where you have corporate exhibitors like General Electric, which brings good things to life. Ronald Reagan is their publicity spokesperson, and he's master of ceremonies for the opening of Disneyland, and he's been working for General Electric for a year. And he's the president of the Screen Actors Guild of Hollywood, a cult. And there's Ronald Reagan, there's Art Linkletter, there's Bob Cummings, and there is a military complex for parents and children called Disneyland. And there's two Disneylands. There's what you see, and then there's underground military complex. And at the Dumbo exhibition, at the Dumbo exhibit, there's a jail. They have a jail there on Ball Road. They have a jail. There's Disneyland Jail, penitentiary. Yes, there is. There's a jail at Disneyland. I'm assuming that would be true at Disney World. An underground facility with tunnels and a jail. That's what it is in Anaheim, Orange County. You betcha. Anyway, what I'm trying to tell you is that that Elizabeth Holmes is just a scapegoat in the way that Jack Ruby was. His name is Jacob Rubenstein. He's a Jewish fellow from Cicero, Illinois, near Chicago, Illinois. Jack Ruby. Everybody thinks his name's Jack Ruby. It's Jacob Rubenstein. And his older sister, Eva, ran the money laundering operation at the Carousel Club, which was to deposit drug money and then get it transferred back to Carlos Marcello in New Orleans. Carlos Marcello, who was born in Tunisia and had no United States passport, but lived most of his life in the United States of America, even though he was never a United States citizen. Carlos Marcello, because he works for CIA. They don't have a problem with him not being a U.S. citizen. Robert Kennedy had him transferred to Guatemala. It didn't work out too well for Robert Kennedy, did it? Eventually, Carlos Marcello got his retribution, right? He got rid of both John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy. I mean, he didn't, but his employer did, the CIA. Anyway, I thought you should know that Elizabeth Holmes falls into a Hebrew category here. In this case, Hungarian Jewish category. Not unlike Bill Graham, not unlike Jack Ruby, not unlike Mark Levin, not unlike Sidney Gottlieb, not unlike Albert Laverne, medical doctor Albert Laverne. And I can go on and on all day long. I'll go toe-to-toe with you. There are hundreds of people in this equation. Lawrence Schiller, fake author for the Sharon Tate cover-up, fake author for the O.J. Simpson cover-up. Fake. All right, thanks for listening. Have a great day. Please hit the like and subscribe if you like the whole cackling cacophony of chaos. Take care. Bye-bye.